The following program is intended for mature audiences.
Shalom and welcome to the SINagoguge. This is a podcast for consenting adults for information, education, and entertainment on BDSM, sexuality, and all things related. If you're not a legal, enthusiastically consenting adult, then
pick up the needle, press pause, or turn the radio off.
For those who remain, now might be a good time to switch to your headphones.
Welcome to the SINagoguge. I am your host, and they call me the Rabbi.
Pretty fly for a rabbi.
I put the sin in synagogue, and I am a cisgender, ambimorous, gynesexual, sadistic, bratty, daddy doll. Sex therapist by day, kink educator by night, and in both these roles, I help people make their kink a religious experience. While I am a mental health professional, this podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes only and is not a replacement for therapy. Seek out the assistance of a trained professional for help with your specific situation. Hosting with me today is my partner, my ADHD squirrel wrangler, my submissive, my brat, my little, my pony, or just my little pony.
Aww.
The beeve to my Wally. Little bit.
Oh my gosh.
This is episode number 27, when with us today is Mrs. Darling to talk about the modern day 1950s household. What it is and isn't may surprise you, including day in the life depiction, definitions and terminology, and dispelling myths. But first, a word from our sponsor. Mrs. Darling has been actively involved in the community since 2010, including leading TNG, founding Submissive Ladies United Together, and organizing the local MAsT chapter. Mrs. Darling shares a life in submission as a contributing author for SubmissiveGuide.and. Her debut full-length book, Darling Discovered, won Best Nonfiction Book at 2017 BDSM Writers Con. Her essay detailing their modern-day 1950s MS household is featured in The Paradigms of Power, Styles of Master-Slave Relationships, authored by Raven Kaldera. Mrs. Darling loves nothing more than serving her husband, his home, and the BDSM community. Thank you for being here in the SINagoguge. Let's talk about the modern-day 1950s household.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to the conversation today.
Okay, so where does one begin with the 1950s household?
So I guess probably the best way to maybe start discussing it is start discussing it as the terminology came to me in my household. Maybe our beginning in the 1950s household. We had taken our vanilla egalitarian, like we met, dated, married in a vanilla egalitarian relationship. And it was failing very quickly. And so through like a million hours, like other couples who come into BDSM, spent all sorts of time having conversation about what was working and what was not working in our household. And for us, a lot of the conversation was about division of obligation, division of labor, division of power, and eliminating some of the power struggle in many egalitarian marriages or relationships. And so we reinvented ourselves into what looks like an old-fashioned 1950s household, where my husband works, he makes the decisions, he pays the bills, I stay home, I cook, I clean, I bake, I take care of the household. And then through our journey into BDSM, we learned more and more about the 1950s household, and it felt a little bit like coming home to us. And when Raven Kaldera sent out, I had been documenting writing my deepening in submission to my husband, and somebody connected me with Raven, who had put out a poll of DS couples, MS couples specifically, because the Paradigms of Power is about master-slave relationships and the way that they structure those relationships. and put out a poll and asked Kinksters who are living this way, how do you closely identify? And they listed a bunch of different ways, like leather and gore, like what you traditionally think of as ways of that a MS dynamic or DS dynamic could look or function as. And the 1950s household was both the most indicated that people identified as 1950s household, but then also too, it was the last essay to be authored. It's like a lot of people liked the idea of a 1950s household, but there weren't a lot of people kind of defining it or talking about it. And so my husband and I sat down, put pen to paper, and tried to document what a modern day 1950s household looks like in a BDSM way. And so I think that that's probably how we got started into really talking in depth about what it looks like for our 1950s household.
Gotcha. So how long have you been living the 1950s household?
Since 2010, full time. We came into our 24/7 total power exchange, dominant and submissive relationship in 2010. So about 15 years now. That means it's been 15 years or more. 16 years ago was when we made the transition. I haven't worked outside of the home. My official job title is homemaker. I make my husband's home beautiful, and my entire job on earth is serving him, his house, cooking, cleaning, baking, tending to his needs, making him happy, and serving his house and the community. And so that's my job. That's what I do 24 hours a day is as a homemaker. And we put a lot of like hard work and effort to make sure that we did it in a very safe way. And we continue to do like checks and balances to make sure that we're doing it in a really smart way, because it's a fairly risky relationship dynamic in that I'm not working. Now, a lot of people in the 1950s household, they still do work, both the head of household and homemaker work. And so 15 years.
That's awesome. I mean, you know, you're putting it out there as if it sounds just, you're putting it out there and making it sound like, oh yeah, this is like super easy. But I know damn well just how much effort and work goes into it on both sides, especially to, you know, you're running and managing a household. Yeah. Even through the power exchange. And yeah, it being a full-time job, it's a full-time job.
Yeah, it's definitely our division of labor, our division of power in our household for the last 15 years has existed in that my husband, my head of household. So that's a lot of the 1950 practitioners. That's how we kind of divide it, is head of household and homemaker. And so my husband is 100% in charge of the financial health of the home, and he's in charge of final decision making, and I handle everything else. And it's so funny because I feel like both of us look at each other's side of the slash and what we're obligated to, and we're both a little bit relieved to have chosen our side of the slash, because what he does, which is supporting the home financially, but like not just like make a job, pay the bills, which he does entirely, but he funds our retirement account. Like, we're in a marriage, like he has to fund my retirement account. He has to make sure that that life insurance is paid. Like, he does all of these really big financial things, not just for me, but for the entire household, and then final decision makers. And so, but he always jokes that he's really grateful he would never trade sides with me, because I do everything else. I do I'm his personal shopper. I don't think he's gone into a grocery store in a decade. He doesn't go into stores. He doesn't clean a toilet. He does nothing outside of stay focused on that income production and final decision making, unless he wants to join in. So, like, of course, that's on him. He certainly pitches in if I look overwhelmed or something like that with my side of the slash. But yeah, it's a full-time job. It's truly 24/7. Yeah.
How hard is it as a, and I'm gonna, like, I feel like I'm just kind of jumping into the deep end on this of, all right, so how hard is it as a modern woman, modern individual, and with society saying, okay, as a modern individual, you know, that you should have your own job, do the, you know, be independent on all of that, like, how much of a risk and how, I wouldn't say scary, but I guess not really scary, but scary was it to, you know, really go through all of that and consciously make that decision of, like, I am giving up.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say this power, but this power for you to have this much control over my life, you know, with that type of thing.
It's so funny because, of course, we have a play and a S&M dynamic, a sexual dynamic in our marriage. And I always joke that, like, despite the fact that we play pretty edgy, we've been together 20 years now. And so fire and knives and, like, breath play, like, all the, like, really scary things. And I feel like if I were to stack up what I feel like our edgiest play is, it's this relationship dynamic. It's a 1950s household. It is truly an exchange of power. It came over a long time. So I think that's always important to recognize this did not happen overnight to a person that was unfamiliar to me. I always like to encourage submission being a little bit like wading into unknown water where, like, you just don't dive in and start swimming really fast, really far. You just, like, go into your ankles and then, like, let the water move you a little bit and feel the temperature and understand what the depth. And then you take slow baby steps. And that's definitely what we did. We didn't leap into this. It is scary, and it is definitely, I have given up power in exchange for a life of my greatest fantasy, which is to live without the obligation of, like, those big final decisions, to live without having to work for a living, to be able to tap into what I feel is the most authentic me, the happiest me, which is one who focuses on my household, the people in it, my friends and family that we surround ourselves to, being able to volunteer in the community and give back my effort, because I like to serve my community as well as my husband and house. It's the power that I've given up is equal to the freedom that I've been given in the life decisions, and so that helps.
That sounds absolutely awesome. I mean, in the sense of, I mean, it's the, okay, well, I've given up this, but in exchange, I'm able to give back to the community. I'm able to not have, like, the work obligation. I mean, I have my home, the household homework obligation. But part of me also says, like, once you get in a good routine with that then you figure out, like, okay, what outside stuff can I put also my additional energy to, as to, you know, yes, I still have this. My house is running smoothly. I'm really good, but how can I also foster good things and like, you know, our community and everything like that, which is absolutely needed as well. Which sounds, you know, absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I think it's our 1950s household grew out of the idea. So my husband and I were both working. Obviously, I have a college degree. I was a good income earner. I had an excellent career. And we asked ourselves, the question really became when we said, can we do this? Can we function with one income? Can we make this make sense. And the real driving question was, if my husband worried about nothing in the home, how far could he get in his career? And if I worried about nothing financial or career related, how beautiful could I make our home? And that's really the balancing act, which is, I'm sure if you've been in a long-term relationship, it's not unfamiliar to be at the end of a work day, to be at the end of 8 hours and then commuting and, oh, what's for dinner? I don't know. You decide. We just had this. Who's picking up dry cleaning? It felt like a never-ending conversation. Us as two equal powerful, like, career people leaving out of the home and going to work in the world every day. And so we asked, could we sacrifice the money that I was making? Could he replace that if he was never obligated to clean the toilet, to go shop for jeans, could we leverage each of our skills? His is an excellent leader. Mine is an excellent follower. Could we leverage that into this dream life, this old-fashioned dinner on the hot dinner at the table at 6 p.m. made of our favorite meals with in-season ingredients every single day of our lives? Could I build this dream home? Could he fund the both of us? And the answer has been yes. It's been resoundingly yes.
So at the same token, then I'm also going to ask, like, how much trust did he put into you with, like, on his end of giving up the control of, I'm not going to take care of home because I'm relying on you for that as well?
Yeah. So we did a lot of, we've been living in a 1950s household for about 15 years. The first, I would say 2 to 3 years, of which 10 to 13, we lived in a 24/7 DS dynamic, and we really spent those first 2 or 3 years as dominant and submissive, with written contract that we're very paper oriented people, we're business oriented people, so we like to have stuff written down to reference back to, and then every 6 months we would sit down, we'd review it, we'd decide what's working, what's not. But those first 2 or 3 years were heavy focus on building the trust that each of us needed. So his trust for me really came down to him training me to be his ideal homemaker, to be his ideal submissive. So he had to spend some hands-on time with me, this businesswoman who is going to, like, become this soft homemaker who wears A-line dresses, who has her husband choose the clothes and the hair and to look a certain way. He had to train me, and so we're in a reward and punishment dynamic. We have been. I can't remember the last time. Like, I'm knocking on wood here that I've needed to be punished. A lot of that was in the training of it, but he's a very exacting man, and he needed to train me, and then every single time I successfully accomplished something a little bit more, you place like a little brick of trust, and it was in both directions. And so every time he would bring home the bacon, he's funding our lives, he's taking, he's putting money into our savings, he's doing the things just like I'm doing the things. And, in our original contracts in the beginning, it outlined both what I was agreeing to and what he was obligating himself to, the standard he was holding for himself. And so we check in with each other, and it's built over time.
Cool.
I know whenever I'm trying to explain the concept of a power exchange to a vanilla who is curious or whatever, I use the 1950s household because I think it's the one that easiestly understood to people on the outside. With that said, though, I imagine it's also the one that you can be the most public about.
So probably, in that we probably get away with a lot. We're just, like, so boring publicly facing. We look like tax paying, voting. Like we look like we're, my day collar that I wear is, has been upon my neck. Nobody's noticed in 13 years. It just looks like a pretty necklace. We probably get away with a lot. And I'll tell you, I don't think it's just us, but having interactions with other people in the 1950s household, that whole unassuming thing being like the idea of a white picket fence with like a dungeon in the basement that nobody knows about, that's part of our kink. Like that's part of what makes it exciting for us, is that we can both live this way, like literally enslaved, like the shit that we do, but then nobody knows, like nobody ever knows. And that's part of the thrill for us. It did get to a point, obviously, I would say probably 2 years into us doing this independently, where we really needed the BDSM community. And so we did get involved so we could at least like take that mask off and talk to other people about it.
Sure.
Learn from them, exchange with them. And so, yeah, you can like skate by in public a little bit with it. And I also do think that it's very approachable for vanilla people who are learning about power exchange dynamics. It's very easy to, because there's pop culture examples of it, right? We've all seen I Love Lucy. We've all seen examples of the little lady, which I don't think 1950s household have anything to do with gender. They're reverse 1950 households who have a female being the head of household. That it doesn't make any difference to us. But we have all seen examples of these types of like, here's a scotch at the end of the day. I'm waiting in a pretty dress. Like, hi, dear, sit down to the hot meal. It's very easy to, for example, power exchange.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Gotcha. I mean, the pop culture reference that keeps popping up into my head, although I know it's a decade late, is the Flintstones.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I think that it extends into the 60s as well. I don't think, it's kind of a mid-century modern notion. If we start looking at the real rise of feminism that kind of changed the trajectory, I would say, it's later in the 70s. And so anywhere in those 50s, 60s is going to feel a little bit like what our relationship looks like.
So, since you brought it up, I know there is always pushback with female identifying submissives that it's anti-feminist.
Yeah.
I have to imagine you get some of that pushback not only from the kink community, but also the vanilla community, since you are open about that. How do you respond to that?
Also to myself. I mean, I feel like that's something that as a feminist, as a woman who is in full support of, I want people, I love that I have the option but not the obligation to live this way. That it's difficult for me. I mean, it's something that I had to come to terms with. And I would just say it's that. I would just say that it's certainly, you can be feminism, being a feminist, supporting women's rights, pushing for that, isn't contingent upon your relationship style, and it isn't contingent upon your career choices. You can fight for those things, believe in those things, regardless of those things, whether you're single or partnered, whether you work inside or outside of the home. And so I want to encourage people to continue the good fight, continue working to ensure that women have the freedom to choose the life that they want. I'm very grateful for the fact.
We lost you.
Lost you.
Did your screensaver go off?
I think so. Hello? Uh-oh. Try again. Hello?
I'm sorry. Yeah, I lost you for a second.
That's okay.
The last thing we heard was, I'm very grateful for...
I'm very grateful for the opportunity to do this without the obligation to. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it is pro-feminist because it is a choice.
I think so. Yeah.
Gotcha. There's my other pop culture reference that keeps coming into my head.
Which one?
What?
Episodes of the original Quantum Leap series.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was also thinking at the earlier versions of WandaVision too,
Mm-hmm.
because that would be like, something that somebody might have seen like more recent versus some of the others. So
Yeah, a lot of people like the Dick Van Dyke Show. A lot of people like Leave It to Beaver, and there's always references to some of those old shows. Also, some new shows that reference it. And just like any other part of BDSM, you take what you like about it and incorporate it, and you leave the rest behind. If something about it doesn't interest you.
So the power exchange is the 1950s household. Is your household decked out in 1950s type stuff?
So I do lean like to a pretty clean, modern aesthetic. Not everything is mid-century modern, but I do collect those things. I do navigate towards those things. That's kind of the big division of 1950s household, is like the look of the 1950s, and then also to like the relationship style or the relationship dynamic of the 1950s. In terms of the look for us personally, it is more about how we look, including how we talk, how we act, what we wear, how we interact with people. It's the etiquette that's involved, stuff like that, in addition to the relationship stuff. But our home isn't super 1950s, but I do collect things. I definitely wear an apron to clean. I wear exclusively skirts and dresses. I haven't owned jeans in 15 years. I don't wear any denim. I do have a pair of slacks or two for the very rare occasion. We live in warmer, colder climate now. And so sometimes you have to like devastatingly put on a cute little pair of vintage trousers. But 99% of the time, it's skirts and dresses only. We definitely have like the look of the 1950s. Red lips, Marilyn blonde hair, stuff like that.
like, you're just making this sound all kinds of fun.
It is really fun. No, it's really fun. Yeah, it's really fun. I feel very feminine. I feel very beautiful. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with, and this is our personal relationship dynamic, but my dominant, my master, he's constantly, like I said, he has very high standards, very exacting standards, but it's all from the point of view of he's helping me become the best version of myself. Not what he thinks the best version of me is, but after knowing me and learning me and seeing me and marrying me, he knows that I would feel the very best about who I am as a human on earth and the days that I live and the work that I get done if certain things happen, and he holds me to that standard. And so I feel like it's a night and day difference. I'm really proud of how far we've both come in our work, his work outside of the home and my work inside of it, and physically, mentally, emotionally, how far we've come. Yeah, it's really fun. It's a lot of Magic Eraser, if I'm being honest. I always warn people, it's my life. It sounds really sexy, and sometimes it can be, but of course, like most people who live in 24/7 submission, it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so I spend much more time on my knees, like scrubbing baseboards, than I do like on my knees for other reasons. That's just the reality of it.
Yeah, I mean, like, it's one of those where I'm going, part of this sounds really glamorous, and then you're like, today is a toilet scrubbing day.
Right,
and, oh
right.
gosh,
You
do
have
I
4
feel so
toilets to be
glamorous
cleaned.
right now? No, not really.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know.
I think what is really exciting about it is, okay, so if the dream is for me to like, I want to live my life doing nothing but serving my husband, he has to
Yeah.
leave to work. We're not like independently wealthy. We're not from
Sure.
generational wealth. So he has to work to provide for our household. So it's not in me to like lounge. I'm going to roll up my sleeves. I'm going to work my tail off. I'm going to accomplish things while he's out accomplishing things. And then we make a really, we make a really big effort to, when we're together, it's the fun stuff. And when we're apart, we work our asses off. And so we both do it. We both work really hard at it. And so it is. Sometimes it's, you know, I spend time on the red carpet. He's been so successful in business. And then there's a lot of times where it's, oh my God, to have to like go to the store, buy his suit, bring it back here, have him try it on, measure the stuff myself, to return it back to the tailor, to have it tailored, to bring it back here. Like I do everything. And so when it's Christmas time, I do all of the holiday cooking and baking and cleaning. I do the shopping and the wrapping of gifts. Like he does none of that so he could focus on his career. Yeah. So pick your poison, I guess.
Yeah. But I mean, you know, even as he's focusing on his career, it's also the same token of like, he's also focusing on you to make sure like you're also well taken care of. Like
For
in
sure.
order to be able to support him. And it doesn't, and I mean, and for a power exchange, I know that some people view power exchanges of like, oh, well, it's never, or, you know, what is it? It's always the submissive giving more than the dominant. Like I've heard that very, very frequently. But in this aspect, it doesn't necessarily seem like it's a 50-50 exchange. It feels like just what you're describing, it seems as if it's a 70-70 exchange. Like,
For sure.
You're doing, you know, yes, when people are just like, oh, it's just the household, but you're like, no, it's the household. It's all the things. It's including, you know, making sure that he is super presentable for work in order to be like, you know, that successful person. And in the same token, he's still, I mean, making decisions and taking in your input, and, you know, you can voice your concerns, and he's like, all right, you know, how do I figure this out in order to make sure that should anything happen to him, you are still taken care of, on both of those things. And so it seems, as it comes across, your power exchange is more of a 70-70, not, you know, a 60-40 or, you know, whatever type of thing.
For sure. And we consider ourselves like two sides of the exact same coin. It's like we both function solidly together but we're two different sides of the same coin, though. It's and we are both equally valuable. We are both, but like we're better together. Like we're our very best together. We can like move mountains when the two of us stay in our lane. And, you know, over time, we've put in a lot of those, we've put in a lot of systems to even make the power exchange dynamic really efficient. We have weekly meetings. I know a lot of other couples do. We have weekly meetings that we go over a certain like checklist of things we need to discuss for the week to come, to make sure that we're not all day, every day talking about the dynamic, working on the dynamic. We can just work. We just work.
Sure.
And yeah, it is the mental load too. He, you know, the household is everything, but as you said, it's everything in the mental load too, making sure that he has exactly what he needs to have the most successful like work as well. Yeah.
Are there different expectations of a 1950s household depending upon whereabouts you live in the world?
Yeah, yes. Um, yeah, I would say, I'm sure. I think that the idea, we're living in a city right now, a country right now that is very modern in that husbands and wives work. They both work. It's a very egalitarian country. They don't have a lot of stay-at-home moms, stay-at-home dads. Both people in a family, both adults work. They take turns doing all of those things. And so I've seen it from a couple different continents in how accepting it is or is not, what it looks like. I'm sure that there's cultures where it's much more welcome or accepted to be like a stay-at-home mom, stay-at-home wife, to not work outside of the home. I know there are cultures where it's, and it certainly is a point of pride for my husband, but there are entire cultures where it's a point of pride for a husband to provide for the family and not have their wife work. And I don't think that that's, it's not a kink thing. It's about a marriage thing more than anything. And so I think it's important to have a lot of conversation about how each individual feels like their best selves. And if you feel your best working outside of the home, if you feel your best with a part-time job, with a full-time job, then to do that, to be that, and like who can, like, I don't know. I don't spend a lot of time looking into other people's homes, looking into other people's families.
Sure.
Like it's very 1950s of us to do. The long running joke is like old fashioned households. You don't talk about religion, you don't talk about politics, you don't talk about money. You just kind of I want your best bread recipe, and as long as you're happy and healthy and feel good and empowered in your relationship, I think that should be fine no matter where you're at in the world.
Mm-hmm.
For somebody who would be new to this and wanting to try the 1950s households, what are some of the pitfalls you might warn them about?
So I always put, a lot of people want to live this way or try this way, but they're concerned about the financial side of it, and that it makes sense. I always like to share in the beginning, the way that we transitioned was I was working, he was working, and we decided we wanted to try this, and had me work for a 6-month trial run for like the first 6 months, where I continued working and I would just put my paycheck into our bank account. But it was a separate savings account. So we didn't spend any household bills out of that. It was as if my money didn't exist. And it also allowed us to see exactly how much we were spending, to track how much money we were spending on each thing. And then at the end of 6 months, when we wanted to take the leap into like a one-income household, we had my 6 months of savings as like our backup. We had that nest egg sitting there. I would say that. And then I would also say, we spoke briefly, you had brought up like, my relationship will end at some point. Hopefully it's till death do we part. And hopefully that's, when we're 120 years old, at the exact same time on Earth. And then neither of us has to breathe a moment without each other. Like that would be the dream. But at some point, my relationships, my marriage is going to end. So I would say, put backup plans, contingency plans in place to prepare for that. It doesn't matter why the relationship will end. All of them do. I came into this world on my own. I'm going to go out of it on my own one day. And so not just financial, but also, of course, emotional. We have my husband has a letter sitting for me in a safe of, like a decollaring for when I'm ready for it. Since I'm going to wear his collar until the end of our relationship. And so to take those things into account, I would say, is a pitfall. And also, like, you don't want to go too hard in on the like strict rules at once. Try adding in like 1 to 3 like rules to learn, like, oh, let's for 1 month. It's like any other habit, right? If you're trying to build good habits, you're not going to do 50 of them in the same month and say all these 50 things need to change in your life. Focus on the 1 or 2 most important ones and slowly add things in. Things like, oh, we'll only eat out 1 night a week, or stuff like that. So try and slowly incorporate things.
Society tends to put a lot of emphasis on self-worth being tied to job and employment, value being tied to employment. Was transitioning out of that a challenge?
Yes, but I still feel like I have checkpoints in my life as keys, as markers to success. So I feel like I put my own goals out there, publish my first book, publish my second book, plan a perfect vacation for our family this summer. So all the pressure is like comes from myself or my husband, of course.
Sure.
To do excellent things. And like we reward ourselves. We put goals in place. There's a really great, I may have mentioned it. There's a household manual guide that I think is excellent for anybody who's trying to establish a dynamic in a specific style or within a household, whether it's leather or to establish like household values, household morals, household goals, like 30 days, 60 days, 1 year, 5 year. So my husband runs like a household manual that states our who we are, what we're here trying to accomplish together, what we stand for, what we don't stand for, and we review it. But we'll attached to those goals, those SMART goals that we put in place for our household. So this is outside of like his career goals. This is us personally. And we reward ourselves for it. We put tangible goals in place and then we reward ourselves. And so, yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. But I certainly don't miss like, it would be hard for me to go back to having a boss in the world to answer to that isn't my husband. I feel like that would be very difficult after adjusting to not answering to anybody but him. Yeah, like he's my guidepost.
Gotcha.
So, and I'm trying to figure out how I want to word this without this coming across like meh. I'm trying not to.
We're very open book too, and so we're not delicate. So just throw it out there.
No problem. It's one of those where I'm like, I am trying not to make this sound meh, but I'm not sure how to word this correctly to sound meh. Okay, so just one of the things, like, if somebody was new and I'm listening to you talk, and you do all of these things, not just in your home, but outside of your home as well, in order to give back to the community. As a new individual, how hard is it not to essentially lose your own sense of self-identity to just the household? Like how hard would you think that is, or did you struggle with that? In order to, I guess, just keep going?
That's a really great question. I do feel like the woman that I am now is very different than the woman who was at the beginning. Okay. And I feel like more than losing myself, I truly feel like I found myself. I was able to, in clearly stating and having like the like gumption of like, I'm going to speak into the universe. I'm going to speak to my partner. Like it turned the idea of doing these things inside the home. It not only like makes me feel fulfilled, but like it turns me on. So being able to say it, being my husband's like submissive wife in like a non-biblical way, we're agnostic,
Yeah.
but like
Right.
serving him,
Yeah.
serving him, and there is like there is a crossover. I want to point. I don't discount the people who come to this because of Christian domestic discipline or domestic discipline. People do come into this. There's a crossover.
Sure.
But for us, I have found who I feel like I most authentically am as a woman. I feel like it is in my DNA to serve, to service my family. When I go to bed in the dark of night, and it feels fulfilling to do it. I think the what I had to lose in that was the woman who was ashamed of that, who was embarrassed by that. To lose, I would have 15 years ago thought to myself, like, how my family's going to judge me because I don't do anything with my life. And to be comfortable in saying what I do within my household is worthwhile, and it brings me joy, and that's reason enough. Like, it doesn't have to be I don't have to justify my daily function or my existence to anybody else on earth. And so I think that I found who I'm meant to be, and I'm constantly reinventing myself. I hate labels in our community. I feel like my most accurate label, even though I've worn submissive and slave for a long time, the most authentic one for me is evolving. I'm just evolving. I'm all the time. My guy says, if you're not growing, you're dying. And if you're not growing into who you're going to be in a year or 5 years, are you making progress in who you are? And so I think I've really found myself, and that is being comfortable being judged by people in society, by society. 1950s household, being a 1950s style homemaker isn't really popular it's not a really popular job choice. I'll say that.
Sure.
You do get judgment for it. You do get questions about it. Some people think you don't do enough. Some people, but that's okay, because at the end of the day, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and feel good about that.
Sure. Thank you for that answer. I very much appreciate that.
You've talked about head of household and homemaker. What other terminology do we need to be familiar with?
I would say, so like I had briefly mentioned, there's crossover. A lot of people use taken in hand, or it's like abbreviated with TIH, like taken in hand. CDD, which is Christian domestic discipline, DD, which is domestic discipline. Those are probably all good references. And all three of them kind of fall under the umbrella of people who submit because they're religion, which there's a lot of people on earth who submit to their husband or submit to their partner because they believe it's the right thing to do for their spirituality. Not us, it's not me, but that's okay. Taken in hand kind of refers to what we consider to be the dynamic portion of what it is that we do. So it's the function of submitting to your partner's will. And then the CDD, the Christian domestic discipline and domestic discipline, is more what we refer to as like S&M, like spankings, things like that. But they typically, the difference is going to be that everybody falling under those umbrella traditionally they don't admit, or they're truly not turned on by it. So that's kind of the difference between like 1950s households and like somebody out there they think that domestic discipline is about exerting physical power to discipline to like keep your partner under your authority. But they say it doesn't turn them on. Like, I get daily spankings, maintenance spankings, but like it's because my guy likes to like throw me over his knee and like up my little skirt and paddle my bottom. It definitely is because it turns us on. It has nothing to do with spirituality in any way, shape, or form. People talk a lot about Stepford wife, which is an interesting like subset of 1950s household. So typically 1950s homemaker in the community is thought of like capable helper, helpmate, follower to a head of household. Another very similar relationship dynamic style is CEO and COO. I find there's a lot of crossover where the person on the left side of the slash is going to be a CEO, like big picture person, makes all the big decisions, and then like the submissive partner is in charge of operations, so like making things function. Stepford wife is going to be a little bit different. People reference it a lot, but it really truly means that brainless, spineless, like doormat, like yes or no sir, no opinions side of 1950s household, but that's not the norm. And then probably the last one that people reference is like bimboification often exists in the community, especially because we're tailoring. So many people tailored the look of 1950s household, where they're looking like making adjustments to that glamorous, that the look of the 1950s. And so that happens sometimes, and sometimes some people don't do it. I would say those are some of the most important ones.
I was going to say the Stepford wife one sounds like it doesn't sound like it's realistic long term.
Yeah, it would be hard. I mean, being a household manager, doing what I do specifically, it's hard. Like, it's a lot of moving parts. We have homes in 2 continents. My husband's built over the 15 years, he's built his business. Well, at the beginning of our 1950s household, he was working for somebody as an employee and decided about 5 years in, came to me and said, like, I want to risk it all, because when you're in the community that we're in, it can all be taken away from you if the wrong people find out, or if people we all kind of like to fly on the radar. But when you only have one of you working, it felt very risky. And so he came to me and said he wanted to start his own business, and I supported him through that. And now, we own offices in 2 different countries. We fly back and forth. He's built a really big business and big world that nobody could ever take away from us, that we have set up. He set it up for us for the rest of our lives to function and be comfortable. And it takes a lot of moving parts to do that. I can't imagine doing that and being that. And I don't think my husband could. So he's not into that, only in that he needs somebody capable. He needs more than delicious cakes. He needs delicious cakes. He needs delicious cakes too. He needs delicious cakes made by his beautiful wife in an apron. but he also wants like me to be able to troubleshoot big issues in his business, or come in and he'll hand me, you know, instructions on, I need to execute this big idea. Tell me how it's going to happen. And he needs me to be able to handle that stuff. But it would be hard. I mean, it's kind of fun sometimes to play pretend like you're just serving up scotch at the end of the night.
Right. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to diminish the Stepford wife type of thing. I was also just thinking like, you know, going, okay, good. Because I was like, no, I'm just sitting here going, man, that would just be difficult long term to be like that. Yeah. I'm sure that there are people that are out there to an extent. But I'm like, just, I'm going, you know, in order to be, I guess, in order to, unless you were independently wealthy and, you know, didn't have to work. I mean, you know, then that would be a whole nother thing. Yeah. But, you know, as an active 1950s household, you know, to me, I'm going, that doesn't make sense in order to, you know, do that long term, especially because both of you have, you know, so much to put into it, so much moving parts in order to make your home, you know, that much more successful. In order to do that, like, just one of those that didn't make sense to me type of thing. Yeah,
it's you know, there's a subset of the 1950s household, and it makes me sick a little bit, but and I can have my own personal opinion about it, but where there are men who genuinely believe that women and children should be seen and not heard. Like that's how they feel in life. Mm-hmm. And so maybe that's how they want to run their household. And I'm hoping that everybody who gets involved knows exactly is what they're signing up for, just like I did. And as long as everybody consensually is excited for that relationship dynamic, cool. I'm cool with that. But my guy, in fact, it was probably one of his biggest concerns coming into this dynamic. It was one of his biggest concerns pulling me out of the workforce, putting me into the household, was like me being whip smart and like excellent at what I do, like turns him on. Like he likes that about me. He likes that I can get shit done. He likes that I can handle big projects. And so, but he like uses me as that then. He just continues to use me to help our household in whether his business outside of the home needs it or my business inside of the home. So.
Sure. He's using, I mean, it's actually just what you're describing. It's part of your submission. It's part of, for sure. You know, as part of that. Yes. He's leaning into that in order to be like, hey, you know, you have a brain. I want you to definitely use it because, you know, that's going to help us to further both of us.
Well, and I feel like he thinks like it puts his dominance in like hard mode. Like he he owns a really capable, strong-willed woman in the world. Like I don't need him. I could go function independently. You know, we always describe, especially our master-slave dynamic, is I'm a beautiful bird that he's placed inside a cage, but he's left the door open because I can walk out. I have the means. He's provided me with the means to leave whenever I want. It was important to him that when I left my career and I came into the home, that I had a stack of money with my name on it, with it in my touch only, that if I ever want to leave, I can leave. I can walk out. I don't need him. I could go. He gives me, I do volunteer work in his business, help him in his business in my free time. And I'm using quotes there because God, when do I have free time? But I figure it out at 3 a.m. I'll like log in and answer emails for him. But he's put me in a position where I could continue building my resume in case he dies tomorrow. So so I'm a bird in a cage. He's left the door open. I can leave whenever I want, but he's made that cage so fucking amazing to live in that like I would never want to. It's and so it's definitely part of like I submit my will to him. He has to really he has to own this shit. He has to, you know, to deal with it.
Sure.
Are there any myths about the 1950s household that you would like to dispel?
Um, I think we probably touched on a lot of the big ones. Probably the biggest myth is like the doormat Stepford wife myth that most of us are out there. Our only job is to like look pretty and wait for our partners to come home. There's probably a myth about like how much work it actually takes to run a household. It's a lot, like spoiler. Yeah, I would say those are probably the main ones. And I think so. I don't want to downplay the reality of how difficult it is to support a household off of one income nowadays. But I do want to say that when we transition from two careers to one, we had to think outside the box a lot, and do things like go down to one. Like I gave up my car, I gave up my freedom for a bit. Like I worked from home because we needed to cut expenses to build the life that we did, and then focus on each of us in our own lane to build it back up, to grow it again. And you also save a lot by not working. Things like I can pour over multiple different grocery stores, the weekly shopper to find things that are on sale. I know who has the best eggs in town. I know stuff like that. And so I do think it's probably more possible than some would believe. But I know it's hard. I know but also too the myth that you have to be like a stay-at-home wife in order to live in a 1950s household. I think the number is, I think homemaker in the 1950s on in the census, I think housewife or homemaker was third in the list of careers for women. You can work. You don't have to stay home all day, every day. You don't have to give up your job. You don't have to give up your income. I know many, many homemakers who go to work and then come home and bake their bread in their apron and feel beautiful doing it and serve their husbands. And I think that's really lovely. I think everybody should do what works best for them in their household. And so you can definitely work and continue to do so.
I was going to say, and just Olive, as you've described, both of you, if you're going to make it work for a 1950s household, definitely needs to put in the effort and the time, not just, okay, we're going to set this up and, all right, you figure it out.
Yeah, I know that there is it always circulates. It's called the Good Wife's Guide. Whenever people start Googling 1950s relationships, an old school, like Women's Day magazine article comes up about like what a woman should do. Like prepare yourself before your husband gets home. Take 15 minutes to rest so you'll be refreshed when he arrives. It's like there's a whole lot of description about what the woman is obligated to, what the women or the homemaker is obligated to. But not a lot of focus is ever put upon what the dominant or the head of household is obligated to. When we wrote our essay for Paradigms of Power, we included like, it's essentially the Good Husband's Guide or the Gentleman Dominance Guide of like the things, the high standards that like as a dominant, my husband holds himself to, and the importance of putting in just as much work, just as much effort as the homemaker is putting in to make sure that power is being exchanged equally.
Definitely makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, before we transition into the part of the show we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio, is there anything else
you would like to share on the 1950s household?
I don't think so. Nothing for myself. I just want to remind everybody underneath the BDSM umbrella again to listen to people, take what they're doing with a bit of a grain of salt. If you find something, hear something that you're interested in, do it your way. There is no one true way. Work on finding who you authentically are, what you want out of a partner and a dynamic, and then be excited to seek that out and leave the rest behind. Like, you don't have to do what I do. You don't have to do what anybody else does.
Thank you very much for that. I like that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was some great information on the 1950s household. I can't speak for Little Bit, but I think I kind of recognized there's more of that in our dynamic than I've ever given thought to.
Interesting.
Now we come to a part of the show that we like to call Inside the Kinkster Studio, where we get to know you a little better in our own unique, irreverent, and slightly bratty way. Are you game?
Yes, let's go. I'm excited.
All right. First question. What do you think your last words will be?
I feel like my last words will be like some semblance of the sound of like of like relief in some way, like like to be relieved to be having arrived at the end of like a really beautiful, wonderful life. I hope, God, I hope. That would be lovely. I could just be like, I would like that. I would like to think that it's, I love you to my friends and family. We have a policy. We never, ever, like hang up the phone, leave the house, leave parting each other without saying I love you at the end of it. Because if it is the last time we ever see each other, we firmly want that to be the last person the other person hears. So whether it's going to work or going to bed or going to the grocery store, like I never ever leave my husband, we never ever leave each other without love you too, bye, 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 kind of stuff. So yeah, that'll be it, because you never know. Nothing's ever promised.
Right? This is true. All right. So what is your favorite toy in the toy bag?
And maybe it lends itself to like the 1950s. I feel like the longer we play, the smaller of the amount of tools that we actually use. And my single, I would say, if I could only be left with one tool, it would simply be my husband's like belt. And it feels so like quintessential, like husband, end of the day, take his clothes off, take his belt off, and like paddle me over my bottom with it. Feels very like old fashioned, like nothing newfangled. I mean, like I said, we do a lot of edge play, bells and whistles, anal hooks and vampire gloves and like all sorts of things. But if it were one tool left, that's all I would need.
Nice. Thank you.
What is your favorite smell?
My gut instinct is like my husband, like cuddled up next to him, but like that feels so trite. I'm trying to think of anything like fun and cool. Rubbing alcohol is a favorite. I love the smell of rubbing alcohol. It's so clean. It takes like ink off of desks. It's like one of my favorite like cleaning materials is rubbing alcohol. So husband first, that's my like go-to. But if you want like a fun answer, that's not just like, oh, I love my husband. Rubbing alcohol.
What's something surprising you've learned about yourself through all of this?
I am so much stronger than I ever like thought I was, than I thought I was capable. Like I've handled really big things that I thought would crumble me. But like one of my favorite like images would be like a phoenix. So like I feel like I constantly rise from the ashes. Like just set me on fire. That's fine. Because I'll rise up, like I'll get through anything. I'm very resilient, and I'm surprised by that because I'm an emotional person. I have a very tender, caring heart. I'm very sensitive. I cry daily, probably over like happy thing. It doesn't matter. Like for as sensitive as I am, I'm also very strong. I would say that's very surprising to me.
Very cool. Thank you.
Who is your first ever celebrity crush?
Probably Leonardo DiCaprio and Romeo and Juliet in the like modern version of it. Did he play? He played Romeo, I think.
Yeah,
probably
he did.
that.
Yep, you got
probably
it.
that. Probably that.
And I think we know exactly how old you are now,
Right.
based on that answer.
Right, no kidding, right? Yeah. I'm like this is going to age me instantly. Like,
not that much.
Yeah, I would say he's probably pretty recognized. The main character in Cruel Intentions. He was pretty fucking dreamy. And so, yeah, those pretty boring romantic stories.
Like Ryan Phillippe and Sarah Michelle Gellar.
Yes, both of them. Can I tack both of them into the equation?
Yes.
I thought the same with Claire Danes and Romeo. I'm like, can we just like throw them on the pile of like beautiful people doing romantic things? Like, yes, like sexy romantic things. Yes, all of that.
I'm bisexual, so I find like, everybody, lots of people, all kinds of attractive, and
yeah, for sure.
How many kinksters does it take to change a light bulb?
Let's go with 2. Like one to tell somebody how to do it, and the other to follow directions. That
works.
I feel like that's how it would be in my household. So it would take the 2 of us for sure.
That's fair.
If you had to fight any historical figure, who would it be and why?
My only answer is like Hitler, because it's Hitler. Like if I'm going to fight somebody to stop somebody on Earth, like I'm a very gentle spirit, but I feel like I could fuck that guy up. Like I'll throw down. Like I'm ready to punch some Nazis at the. I'm fucking. I can't. That would be that's my gut instinct, because fuck them and fuck that guy.
Well, yes.
Right?
Yes. Yes.
I'd probably lose. I'm not a very good fighter. But that's okay. I would go down trying.
I'm always I know how to use implements very, very, like, all of the equipment. Oh, yeah.
I know how to do nothing.
Well.
And literally, my tool is a feather duster. Like, what am I going to do? I'm going to, like, distract you. I'm going to go in. But see, like, I feel like I could fly incognito. So, like, can I fight by way of, like, I'm just here to clean, and then ignore me, and I'll put some poison in your cup.
Well,
like, that's fighting, too.
See, it is.
Arya Stark baking people in a pie. Listen,
well,
there's other ways to fight.
Look, it's one of those, like, you do housewife stuff, and as a 1950s housewife, I am pretty damn certain you have, like, some pretty sharp skills with a knife.
I do. I'm excellent with a knife. I could use that.
And how to, like, hide. Though I should probably stop.
Yes. Let's keep the
like, I'm gonna, like, incriminate somebody on something. Should something happen, right?
They'll be playing this in court one day. No, I'm not doing anything.
No, this is.
We're talking baking.
Look, exactly.
Feed him with a wooden spoon.
Yeah. Yeah, I could wield a wooden spoon.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I can fuck somebody up with a wooden spoon.
But somebody's
I
like
can
hands
fuck
in a
somebody up real
KitchenAid,
hard
like
with a wooden spoon.
like I could do some, like you could do some, put like get their necktie stuck in it, and like there's ways you could like use the kitchen.
Mhm.
Not that I know, of course. I only know how to bake meringue.
True.
I will gladly turn this over to state's evidence if and when the situation.
That's fine. I'm like the most like morally like pure. Like I want to be like I'm like a good girl. Like I live for like good girl pat on the head. So like I ain't doing shit wrong. So I'm not worried about it being evidential
Right?
one day.
Nope, same here.
Meanwhile, you know how to kill a person with the KitchenAid, and I have suspicion you know exactly how long and at what temperature to put somebody in the oven for.
That's what I do is I troubleshoot things. So I'm quick on my feet.
Right? There you go. Depends on how big the battery is.
Right. Yeah.
Add 5 degrees for every pound.
Oh God.
Or 5 minutes, I'm sorry. Add 5 minutes for every pound.
Oh my God. Oh.
What? It's on every single recipe card when you cook meat. Add 5 minutes for every pound.
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
Oh. All right. What is so random, but what is one of the most useless skills that you might possess, that you yourself possess?
Useless skill.
Yep.
I'm trying to think. I'm really good at keeping walls clean. Like I said, that magic eraser. I'm really good at like I'm looking around the room I'm in, not one scuff mark, because I'm really excellent at like utilizing a magic eraser to give like the illusion of clean. My goal in cleaning is to keep my home. I guess this is probably a pretty useless skill, but my home is always expected to be 15 minutes till company ready. That's like the standard. So like my husband can call me right now or text me right now and say, in 15 minutes, I'm bringing a client by, and I have to be like in a pretty dress with my face made up. I have a welcoming, clean home. I probably have drinks, special non-alcoholic and alcoholic drinks available. A nice treat I can throw, like pull from the freezer and throw into like an air fryer and oven and have ready a 15-minute window. And so I would say keeping my walls clean are part of that. 15 minutes.
I don't know if that's useless. I'm rather jealous of that myself.
It feels useless because it's not important. It's not important. It doesn't feel like an important thing in the world. And in the grand scheme of what's important on Earth, my walls not having scuff marks on them seem very unimportant. I guess there's bigger things.
Okay, fair enough. I will concede that point then. I will concede that.
Can you eat ice cream with your bare hands?
Yes. Yeah.
I promise this is not a trick question.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
No, that's all
It's a
good.
yes. Sure.
I'm like, I can't, only because, like the ice cream going between my fingers gets sticky.
But
and
you
then,
could.
I just kind of get
Like,
squished
would
out,
you
so
want to? No. But could you?
That's a whole different
Yes.
thing.
Like, I think you could. Yeah, sure. You could. Yes. Do I want to? Would I want to? Like, no, I don't like messy. I don't like filthy. I don't like dirty. I don't like sticky. I'm not into that. No, I don't want to, but could you? Yes, of course. Practically, sure.
And what methodology do you think would work best?
I mean, I'm just envisioning like a hand going to grab a fist out of a carton of ice cream, right? Like that, eat ice cream with your hand. You just fist
Oh.
a tub of ice cream. No, you just fist in. Right? Is there another way?
I mean, you could,
the real hard question is like, how
No.
else would you do it? You just fist into.
I mean, I picture using my hand as a bowl and lifting it up to my mouth.
Yes. You just gotta.
Maybe.
Probably you would have to let it soften a bit if we're going to be practical. You probably need to let it sit on the counter and soften a little bit, and then scoop it into your hand and then bring it to your mouth. Yes. Yeah. That's the answer.
If we're going to be practical.
About bare hand eating ice cream. Because that's very practical.
Look, there are some of us that are still rather practical on this, and then there are some of us, Rabbi, who is like, absolutely chaotic when it comes to like some of that stuff. And it's like,
yeah.
Really don't, right? Yeah, it's like some of us are like, no, we are still like practical on this. Yeah. And then he's like, not me. I'm just going to be absolutely chaotic about it.
Oh, God.
Who cares?
I mean, I feel like in theory, if you take can you use a cone as like is it using your bare hand to pick up a cone and put it into the ice cream to scoop it up to avoid getting the ice cream on your hand? Or does that not qualify for eating ice cream with your bare hand? I mean, technically a spoon would be the same thing. So if you have your hand, which is a bare hand, unless it's gloved, you're using your bare hand to eat ice cream all the time. You just have a tool between you and the ice cream, between the bare hand and the ice cream.
I love the rationale behind this. I am absolutely enjoying this rationale.
I don't think that's...
You don't think that counts?
in the spirit of the question.
Sure.
I'm going to count it only because...
All right, time for the reverse Uno card, which means you get to ask us any question you want to ask, but not if somebody has already asked it to us.
Okay, so this is like my go-to question that I reserve for like when I meet new people or if I'm like at a dinner party. This is like how I engage in conversation. So I'm going to list off 3 things. And I would like you to respond, placing those 3 things in order of what you think is the most likely to be a real thing or to be true, down to the least likely. Okay? Are you ready for the list of 3? So I'm going to give you aliens, God, like an all-seeing, all-being power, aliens, God, and ghosts. Like spirits walking around Earth. So you're going to rank them in like number 1, most likely, definitely, probably true is going to be either God, ghosts, or aliens, and then 2, and then 3.
I believe God is the ghost of an alien, so...
You're like, all of them. A, B, C, 1A.
Yeah, see, here's my issue. So knowing enough science and enough reality and enough things, even through my biology classes, a lot of my biology professors were like, do not discredit a higher power.
Interesting.
And, there has been science behind, finding spirits and entities and different things like that. So I can't quite
It's hard.
As like, one most to least likely, because I'm like, I know damn well we are not the only living creatures in this universe. Have they gotten to us yet? Maybe.
Sure.
Are they like showing up and being like looking at us going, well, they aren't quite ready to meet us yet, so, they're doing this shit? Fuck that. We'll come back later.
There's no intelligent life here.
They haven't mastered. They're not quite intelligent yet. Well, maybe those few people are, but the rest of them, we're going to give it time.
Millennia.
Right. And, I can't discredit a lot of things just because, there's certain things, just from how
Yeah. Great.
Even though I am a recovering Catholic, and I say this definitely only, and just knowing all of that and knowing just how I was brought up to really think and expand lots and lots of different things, I can't say least likely on any of them for me.
Well, thank you for sharing.
So yeah, no problem. You're welcome.
Aliens, ghost, God.
Aliens,
ghost,
God. It's so funny because there are some people who, when you begin asking the question, some people are like your first response and really thoughtful and open to all of them and like very difficult. And there are some people who firmly believe they know the answer and it's correct. So you answered that very emphatically, like definitely, like how you feel really confident in that. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I have read actual scientific papers that state octopuses are descendant from aliens.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same.
Alien ghost God. Yeah, I think that's mine as well. Do you feel like you've had an experience with spirits?
Oh, absolutely.
Ooh.
My parents live in a house that is 220 some years old
Interesting.
now. So there was always some sort of odd energy around. So.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to say, we were also at the reformatory.
Oh, yeah, that was not cool.
I'm like, that was super fun.
With the bad
The
spirits.
Ohio State Reformatory,
Yeah.
which is now a tourist attraction, but it was also the set for Shawshank Redemption.
God.
Yeah,
Yeah. So it's actually, I mean, they're like, yeah, legit, it's haunted, and they take you through certain rooms and such like that they're like, be aware if you are sensitive to ghosts and those energies, you can either still see things. People have caught stuff on cameras. Sensitive people have actually felt things. And Rabbi and I were going through, and like, I'm taking my time through this room going, wow, this is really cool. Like, like looking for different things. And all of a sudden, like, he comes through and he is green at the gills and sweating, and his heart's racing, and he feels like he's going to pass out. And he said, I just felt something go through me.
I felt like I walked through a ghost. Is the way I put it.
Yeah. So we had to move through that area because all of a sudden he's like, I'm feeling rather sensitive and, not feeling good because I had, either, as you said, you went through or walked through the ghost. In order to get him to a less energetic area that was known to have, ghosts and everything like that, for him to start to feel a little bit more on even keel.
Yeah, it was very much a specific place.
Wow.
But outside of the ghost thing, that would have been a great place to have a play party.
I know, right? I know. It's all like dark and stuff like that. I was traveling. I don't know if you've seen Stranger Things. The prison that they were in, I'm quotation mark Russian prison that they had him in one of the last seasons. I went to go take a tour of that prison. And it was the exact same thing where it was like, it felt so like it was a combination of like so dark, so creepy, so like, but also like historically beautiful. That I'm like, oh my God, like you can fucking tie people up here. I'm like, of course you can. If there's prison bars everywhere, knock it off. Like, that's not what this tour is for. Lock me in a cage. No, just stop it.
So final questions. To bring this back onto topic.
All right.
That's all right. We're having a good old time.
Yeah, I'm having a great time. You guys are awesome.
Oh, thank you. All right, my final question. What's your favorite swear word?
It's gotta be fuck. It's the most common one. It's most applicable in the most amount of ways. I would say fuck is probably my favorite. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I know it's boring, but it's like an old hat that you wear. It like feels like It feels comfortable leaving the lips.
Well, yeah. And it's so
versatile. It's positive, it's negative, it's like, it's verb, it's noun, like, it's like all, it's everything. It's like, it's gotta be. I feel like it's gotta be that.
So if somebody wanted to follow you on social media, reach out and contact you, how would be the best way they do that?
If you're in the kink community and have a Fat Life profile, like probably Fat Male is the best. It's Mrs. Darling, MRS DARLING. And then if you are not comfortable using that website, I understand, you can always email. It's Ryder, RYDER, and Darling, ANDDARLING @gmail.com. So Ryder and Darling, I serve Master Ryder. That's really like the true notion of my name. Like I publish under Mrs. Darling and my writing, but it's actually Master Ryder's Darling. Mrs. Darling's also like the mom from Peter Pan. Like, I don't know if you remember like the Disney. Oh, yeah. It's Mrs. Darling. She's like, you know, oh, come on, darlings. I'm going out on a hot date with my husband, with Mr. Darling. And that's when the kid, but so it's a combination of those two things. But so it's Ryder and Darling @gmail.com. For email, yeah. It's the best places.
Gotcha. Cool. Well, thank you for coming on the show.
Oh, you guys, I had so much fun.
Thank you.
You've been a great guest. I've enjoyed learning about the 1950s household.
Same.
For our listeners, upcoming SINagogue classes, in-person and virtual, Electric Mayhem, Electroplay with the Violet Wand, Electric Mayhem 2, Electroplay Beyond the Violet Wand, Perfect Strangers, negotiating scenes at 4 Cons and Dungeons, and more, all coming up. Check out the website for specific details on those classes. But remember, your kinks are nothing to be ashamed of, unless, of course, you have a humiliation fetish, in which case you should be very, very ashamed, you dirty little pervert. But that's it. That's our show. Say goodnight, little bit.
Good night, little bit.
SINagogue hosts and guests are subject matter experts but are not the expert. We believe that, outside of violating consent, there is no wrong way to do kink, except to think your way is the only way. This show is presented from a RAC, risk-aware consensual kink point of view, and not SSC, safe, sane, consensual, because every individual's definition of safe is different based on their own risk profile. The use of the word safe on this show fits our definition of safe, and that does not have to be your definition. Opinions expressed by guests on the show are those of the person expressing the opinion, not of the show.
Follow us on Facebook, FetLife, Blue Sky, YouTube, Etsy, Twitter, and Tumblr as SINagogue BDSM and as SINagogue Kink on TikTok, Instagram, and Threads. If you learned something or just enjoyed this podcast, consider making a donation via PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, Patreon, or Ko-fi, username SINagogue, or find links to all of those on our website, SINagogueBDSM.com. Remember, that's SINagogue with an I. Also on the website, links to past episodes, upcoming classes, book us as educators, shop our store, and more.
Just a reminder, we try to make our content as inclusive as possible, regardless of gender, orientation, role in the lifestyle, etc. But we do inherently speak from our own point of view. For the most part, substitute our identity with your own to make it work. We want to know when we make a mistake, so we can learn and grow from those mistakes. So if you feel like we did say something that is genuinely offensive, we encourage you to let us know. Reach out to us with your questions, comments, or concerns via our website or call us at 469-269-0403.
Brought to you today by the letters and the number.
San Diego High School Football Room!